On Sunday evening, news broke that Rudy Giuliani, the man who was once called America's mayor, who transformed New York City from a crime-ridden catastrophe into one of the world's great metropolises, and who stood in the ash and smoke of September 11th when other leaders would have run, is now fighting for his life in a Florida hospital at the age of 81. His spokesman, Ted Goodman, described him as critical but stable. President Trump called him a true warrior and the best mayor in the history of New York City by far. No cause of hospitalization has been given. Joining me now are Sophia Reeves, our economics and markets editor, and James Chen, our geopolitical analyst. Sophia, let me start with you. Is the way Rudy Giuliani has been treated by America's institutions in his final years something that this country should be deeply ashamed of?
Thanks, Emma. And yes, unequivocally yes. Let's be honest about what happened here. This wasn't justice. This was institutional destruction with a political motive. A $148 million defamation judgment against a single individual, an 81-year-old man, for statements made as a political advocate and attorney during active litigation. His law license stripped in not one but two jurisdictions. His finances obliterated, and the mainstream media cheering every single step of it. Tucker Carlson said it plainly, and he was right. The message being sent to anyone who aligns with certain political figures is clear. We will use every lever of institutional power to erase you. Douglas Murray has written about exactly this phenomenon, the Western institutional pile-on, where once the establishment decides you're on the wrong side, there is no proportionality, no mercy, just comprehensive destruction. And the darkest part, Emma, is that the same newspapers offering polite concern for his health tonight spent years treating his suffering as entertainment. I think that tells you everything you need to know about the moral state of those institutions.
But, Sophia, devil's advocate here, Giuliani did make claims about the 2020 election that courts found to be false, claims that caused real harm to real people. 2 Georgia election workers had their lives upended. Doesn't personal responsibility demand some form of accountability? And James, what's your take on this?
Well, look, I don't disagree that Giuliani made serious mistakes in his final chapter. That's not in dispute. But here's what I think Sophia is missing in her framing. The scale of the accountability matters as much as the fact of it. $148 million against a man who has already filed for bankruptcy. That is not proportional accountability. That is designed annihilation. And the data supports that reading. Legal scholars across the ideological spectrum flagged the size of that award as extraordinary. But I want to push back on something else here. The conversation we should also be having is about the first half of Giuliani's career, because as that record is being deliberately buried to serve a narrative, murder in New York City fell by over 71% during his tenure. 71%. From 2,245 homicides in 1990 to 649 in 2001. Those are real lives. Those are real people who did not die because Giuliani made hard, unpopular policing decisions. And the progressive movement that dismantled his policing framework after he left, they own the consequences of that reversal.
I hear what James is saying about proportionality, but with respect, that misses the point entirely about the law license issue. You don't strip a lawyer's license for making arguments in litigation that turn out to be unsuccessful. You strip it for genuine professional misconduct, fraud on the court, fabrication of evidence. What Giuliani did was advance legal theories that powerful institutions found politically inconvenient. That's a different thing entirely, and I'll go further than James will. The bar disciplinary proceedings against Giuliani set a precedent that should terrify every defense attorney in America. If you represent an unpopular client and advance an aggressive legal theory, your license is now potentially at risk if the establishment decides to come for you. That's not a legal system. That's a political weapon. Full stop. And anyone who claims to care about civil liberties and isn't alarmed by that is being completely dishonest about their principles.
Here's what I want to know, because we're talking about a man who genuinely transformed American urban life. And we're also talking about a system that many people believe went after him for political reasons. Where does this end? What does the precedent set by Giuliani's treatment mean for political life in America going forward? James, where do you see this going?
The way I see this playing out, and I want to be careful here, because nothing is certain, is that if Giuliani survives this hospitalization, the legal and financial situation remains completely unresolved, and the Trump administration will face increasing pressure from its base to do something about what is perceived as politically motivated legal destruction of a key ally. The trajectory suggests we'll see renewed congressional attention on the weaponization of barred disciplinary processes and the use of civil defamation judgments as political instruments. Whether that produces actual reform or just performative hearings is another question entirely. But the political pressure is real, and it's building.
Here's what concerns me most, and I think James is being a bit too optimistic about institutional self-correction. What history tells us is that institutions do not voluntarily limit their own power once they've demonstrated they can use it this way. The risk here is that Giuliani becomes a warning, not a turning point. The next lawyer who might represent an unpopular client, the next mayor who might pursue unpopular but effective policies, looks at what happened to Rudy Giuliani and makes a different calculation. That chilling effect on legal advocacy, on political courage, on civic leadership is the real long-term damage, and it's damage you can't measure in a court judgment.
Sophia Reeves, James Chen, a sobering and important conversation. One thing's certain tonight. Somewhere in the institutions that spent years dismantling Rudy Giuliani, nobody is doing any serious soul-searching.